Narcissistic personality disorder. What is the paranoid schizoid position, and what is schizoid personality disorder? Could you explain a bit more of the paranoid schizoid position, please? My ex-narc was diagnosed with schizoid personality. Is this linked too? Well, I used to think so, and do you know what? I'm still not entirely sure that they're not related. I mean, when I describe schizoid personality disorder to you, you're probably not going to think that it's got anything to do with NPD, and it probably doesn't. I think I got confused too. I saw the two words, paranoid schizoid and schizoid personality disorder, and I thought that they were related. Well, it turns out that schizoid comes from the Greek. I think you pronounce it schizein. It means split. It was a man called Eugen Bleuler in 1908 who used the term schizoid to describe a person's split from reality, in a sense, a split from social interaction, preferring to withdraw into an internal world. It also appears that he may have used this in the beginning, to talk about schizophrenia and the tendency to withdraw into the internal world. Now, it actually turns out that Eugen Bleuler was the one who coined the term autism as well as schizoid to describe a person's level of withdrawal towards their internal world. I didn't know that till a few minutes ago when I decided to do a little bit of checking. And it turns out that for a while, autism was actually referred to as schizoid disorder of childhood. I'm not surprised really why many autistics feel that maybe they have schizoid personality disorder, because it does come with a sort of numbed range of emotions where they struggle to actually feel their emotions. I'm aware that I refer to this when I'm talking about psychopaths, but of course I'm not talking about just that when it comes to psychopaths. There's a lot more to it than that. Schizoids tend to not really get much out of social interaction at all, preferring to just be alone. But it's said that sometimes they do want to interact, and they'll come out into the world, and when they do interact, they just almost immediately feel like this, it's really pointless, and so then they go back and they isolate again. Whereas many autistics like to interact. It's just that we have limited social battery, so we can get really tired. It's not that we don't get anything out of it, it's different. But, of course, you've only met one autistic. Now, let's turn our attention to the paranoid schizoid position. This is a period of time, supposedly, in Melanie Klein's theory, that we all are supposed to pass through. When the child is in the womb, they are at one. Their needs are being met as they arise. But when the cord is cut, everything is divided into two. This is basically because there's now a time delay between the need arising and it being met. The baby's brain, in its attempt to understand what's going on and create some sort of structure, starts to organize things into those two categories as all good and all bad. The reason that all bad is used to describe where the needs are is because needs create a state of tension in the baby that the baby often doesn't like, and if the time delay goes on too long between the need arising and it being met, then the baby can experience anxiety. They can also experience frustration and aggression. The baby at this stage has no grades of nuance in terms of emotion. They only have these two camps that emotions are kind of stored in, all good or all bad, and they're very, very pure. Because the baby has no other grades of emotion in between, they cannot regulate their experience with these bad objects, as we'll call them, these bad experiences that are being recorded and stored in the psyche. So as a result, the baby tries to stay over here, where everything is all good. The young baby's psyche at this point is ruled by primary ego defenses, and one of those primary ego defenses, which is very important, is called idealization. That is literally where the baby sees the all good as entirely all good and focuses on the all good in order to deny the bad, denial being another primary ego defense. The organization of everything into all good and all bad, that's called splitting. That's the schizoid part, because that means split. The paranoid part is actually said by Klein to be where the baby fears that the bad objects might annihilate the good. That's called annihilation anxiety. And annihilation anxiety is exactly what a narcissist feels if they fall into contact with their unrefined bad objects and they cannot handle them, because they can't. Now, because the baby has no ability to internally process anything that's bad, they have to externalize. They have to look to the external for someone to do it for them. This is called projection. The young baby actually perceives any bad feelings coming up in them as though they are coming from the outside, and so does a pathological narcissist. They don't know they're doing this, it is an unconscious process, but when they say to you that you are aggressive and you know perfectly well that you are not, it's because that's what they're feeling and they can't handle it. So they externalize it and they perceive it to be coming from you, just like a baby. Projection is another primary ego defense. They might then actually use their remaining aggression to trigger aggression in you, and when you then respond aggressively because you're getting tired of it, they then say, "Ha, see, you were aggressive, I knew it." That's called projective identification, yet another primary ego defense. Once they feel justified that they've correctly identified the aggression as coming from you, they then feel kind of powerful. That's called omnipotence, yet another primary ego defense. This is where the baby feels that they can to some degree control their mother, or as Klein might say, the breast. Upon feeling this omnipotence, they feel like they've actually sort of risen above you, okay? And they look down on you, and they might even start attacking you further and actually taking the piss out of you. That means making fun of you for being aggressive, for blowing your top. This is called devaluation, yet another primary ego defense. This is where the baby devalues the supposed potency of the strength of the fear that they feel when they come into contact with their bad objects, as if they can overcome them, but they can't. It's more like they would cling to the idealization and look back on the objects and go like, yeah, but you're nothing because, you know, I've got mummy. For a narcissist, I've got mummy means I've got my grandiose self and you're supporting it. They're able to turn your suffering into something which supports them and makes them feel good, and they think that's great. They think that's something to hold over someone. But that's because they don't have any effective empathy, something that many of them think they don't need. And yet the irony is it's actually through the development of empathy that the good and bad objects integrate, and people get the thing that narcissists want more than anything in the world: individuation. Otherwise, they are stuck for a life of taking other people's character traits from them, imitating them, pulling them into the false self, forever dependent on supply and validation for this false self in order for it to be supported. Their lives will forever be like this. There's nothing that anyone can do about it. The perpetual drive to stay away from anything bad inside them and to get other people to help them to do that, and then to destroy those people that do that for them until there's nothing left of that person, and then to move on. A continued survival of trying to justify the terrible suffering that they leave people with while racking up karmic debt after karmic debt. Sorry, that was a bit of a rant. So maybe you can see there's a sort of difference between schizoid personality disorder and the term schizoid being used in this context. But inherently underneath, it's the Greek term schizein, and it means split. It's just that in one context, it's a split from social interaction into fantasy, whereas with the other one, it's a split psyche in a sense, where the pathological narcissist has everything split into all good and all bad, with no complex emotions in between. And you see, if they're not being idealized, they fall, and then they just punish us for it. That's essentially what the condition is. Anyway, I hope this very long video helps. Bye for now.